All right, let's go ahead and get started. Well, welcome to Lunch and Learn with VCU ACE. We are glad you're spending your lunch hour with us today. So before we dive into the topic, we just have a couple of housekeeping. So for educational and quality control, we will be recording this Zoom session, and by participating, you are consenting to be recorded. But before we do anything with this session and before it's shared, we will edit and remove any identifying information, and the question and answer section will be removed to only an anonymous transcript. So today our topic is data collection during distance learning. And if you're in or around education, data is a hot topic and is something that you are very familiar with. So during this Lunch and Learn, we want to talk about how to collect effective data during this kind of distance learning era. So I want to introduce myself. My name is Lauren Viteri. I am a Training and Technical Assistance Associate at Virginia VCU's Autism Center for Excellence. And I'm here with my wonderful colleague, Monica. Monica, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Monica Kelly. I am currently an alternative curriculum teacher in Culpeper County Public Schools.
Great. So our agenda today, so we broke down this topic that I think Monica and I could talk about for hours upon hours into about 5 sections. So why data is important, especially now, especially during distance learning and virtual instruction, suggested or recommended target areas for data collection, virtual examples and resources, and then we finish up with 5 tips for virtual data collection along with any question and answers. So Monica, take it away.
We found this quote by Albert Einstein, and we thought it was really applicable to data collection. Everybody is a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. And without the data, you're never going to know. It's really crucial to have that data so you know what the best mode of learning is for that person. Data matters. And a story that I think of when I think about why data matters is back to my first year of teaching. I was fresh out of college and I didn't quite know the importance of data yet. I was writing lesson plans and wasn't necessarily collecting data on every skill that was being taught. And I had continued with the same skill for a couple of weeks, and I touched base with the paraeducator who was working with this student, and she was like, oh, he had mastered it a week ago. And I was like, oh. And at that moment, I was like, okay, I need to start taking data on everything so I know as a teacher how to guide my instruction, when to move on, when to slow down, or alter my information. So that was a pretty big wake-up call as to why data truly matters. Data is really important because it allows the team to make informed decisions. Like I said, I wouldn't have been able to know to move on if I didn't have that data. It guides the instruction and intervention. It tracks progress and identifies regression. And that's a big key topic this school year, with the schools being closed for multiple months, learning modalities changing, schedules changing. There may have been some regression, and data can show that from where they left off to where they are now. It also ensures program fidelity. We need to make sure that interventions are being implemented correctly across multiple settings, across multiple staff members. We know our students kind of are all over the place sometimes. And by collecting the data, you can analyze it and make sure that everything is being done correctly. It also provides a sense of direction, tells you as the educator or case manager where to go next, if we need to take a step back. And it also monitors the COVID slide, and that is essentially referring to regression. What skills were lost due to the pandemic? What needs to be retaught? What needs to be gone through the fine-tooth comb to reevaluate where the student's at?
Annika, I also think right now there are many questions about where to go with instruction. Are we focusing on expectations of virtual instruction? Are we talking about academics? And data can really guide this decision. Hey, let's progress monitor. Hey, let's take baseline data. And this will really help all team members make those informed decisions about where to go, especially during these different times.
Absolutely. We can't fix a problem when we don't know the problem is there. And we're going to know the problem is there through data collection. If we're not measuring it, we're not going to know what to do.
School looks a bit different, but we are getting very creative and innovative. And, you know, traditionally there were rows of desks with students in them. Now there are rows with little boxes with students' faces on it in our Zoom calls or our Google Meets. And it's usually the students' faces. Sometimes it's a tour of their house. Sometimes it's their favorite pet or animal or their little brother or sister. But there are different times, and it's a new instructional practice. So we really want to adapt and adjust traditional data collection methods to these new environments, to these learning expectations. And finding the silver lining with all of this is that teachers and parents and team members are really finding vast ways to take effective data collection and really expanding who's collaborating and who's taking data now. So I can't thank educators and family members and related service providers, everyone who are working so closely with distance learning and data collection, because finding the silver lining, we're really finding more effective ways to take data. So even taking a look at this picture, which is a very common picture that we see during instruction, we can take data here, right? So we can see, hey, if we understand the concept, thumbs up. And we can see that the majority of the students have their thumbs up. Maybe we need to check for understanding for one or two. We can even take a screenshot or a print screen that if we need to collect data as staff or family members or related service providers, that we have that that image that we can go back and make sure we're collecting data effectively. Hey, did Sam really understand that concept? Did he have the thumbs up? Oh, maybe it was only, you know, 5 out of 10. I need to come back and revisit my instructions. So there's really amazing things out there for data collection. So considerations for all of this, really think outside the box. Traditional means may not fit the mold for some, you know, some of the data we're trying to collect. So how can we adapt really great and effective data collection methods to a virtual setting? Avoid complex and cumbersome. Right now, we are collaborating so well. We're building partnerships between homes and schools. We really want a data collection method that is user-friendly, easy to implement. You get the buy-in so that it's not nerve-wracking to complete it. It's clear-cut, it's transparent, it's something that can be used to guide instruction. Also, get creative with technology. There are many apps and free services to collect data, and they're out there. And then just refine your choices. What works best for you? Data collection is very individualized. It's based on the student. It's based on your classroom and your family. So really get creative and look at all the different apps that are out there and find the one that fits well with you and your student. I also like this last thought. It's not necessarily a quote, but it's a thought. So focus on if students are participating and not how they are participating. So for example, some students, we get a lot of questions about participation when students, their faces, they don't put their video on. Well, how can we track participation if the student's video isn't on. Sometimes students are uncomfortable. Maybe they're embarrassed with something in the background. We have to adjust and be creative. How about we can track it with reactions, or having them use the chat box feature, or even maybe recording a video with responses, completing a poll. So there are so many different ways that we can see if the students are participating, and maybe not the how. So the next part of this Lunch and Learn is talking about target areas for data collection. These are only suggestions. Again, well, I know Monica and I will say it several times, this is very individualized. So you have to make decisions based on what your students need. So here we wanted to focus on 4 areas of data collection that really get your most bang for your buck. So the first one is maybe taking data collection on virtual time on task. Use what you have, right? You have these students available. Can we monitor active screen time? What does that look like? What about student participation? If they're doing a virtual field trip, are they opening the doors? Are they completing the activities? What about the virtual scavenger hunts are a great way to kind of judge that on task and participation, that engagement. Are they finding the missing A? Are they going over to the digital hand washing station and completing the activity there? Think about recording the engagement time of the students, maybe focusing on 1 and 2 students at a time, doing it systematically. Record, and you can always, again, once it's recorded, you can go back and make sure you're collecting data accurately. Think about learning management system logins. Are they logging in when there's the synchronous times? Are they also logging in asynchronously? It's also important to be transparent about this. We want to collect data for the right reasons. So while we're talking with families, while we're sharing this, you want to be transparent about how we're collecting it and when we're collecting it. I also really like to use student polls. I think this really can guide instruction. We can assess understanding. So we have these polls that all you have to do, it pops up on the screen. Zoom has an easy way to do polls, and that can assess too, hey, people don't feel very confident in this. Maybe we need to work on it more, or hey, we can move on from this task. People are really understanding this. Another area, target area for data collection, again, thinking about the most bang for your buck, how you can individualize these broad concepts, is task completion. And this is similar to a brick and mortar school. You have these permanent products that you submit or turn in. How can we create a virtual finished box? Or is there an activity tracker? If you have a Bitmoji classroom, are they completing the activities that are there? That work submission. So you really have those permanent products that you can print out, you can assess, you can review, you can share with family members. A note to mention about work submission: provide encouragement and positive messages when work is submitted. This is definitely different times for everyone, for students, for staff, for family members. It is something to be acknowledged and recognized when work is completed and submitted. So providing that positive reinforcement and praise when something's submitted, because it could be pretty difficult. We want to pair the computer screen with something students want to sit down and be part of. We don't want it to be a cold classroom climate. We want to pair virtual instruction and growth with positive relationships. Also think about a daily or weekly Dropbox. This is even if they're unplugged students who don't have access to technology. Is there some form of a Dropbox, whether that's a physical Dropbox or something digital, where all that information can be consistently submitted?
The next target area for data collection is social skills. And given that we are in a pandemic, we have to ensure student safety through social distancing, whether they're virtual or in person. Social skills data collection has been a big challenge this year. some really great ways to have that positive peer interaction while still maintaining distance or done through the computer is Wheel of Names. This you can enter pretty much anything and you can have the students take turns. It adds that in variability where they don't know when they're going to be called on. So it kind of works on those skills. You can answer questions or different topics that you're going to talk about during conversation. And all while you're doing that, you're able to collect the data on how many turn takings they had during the conversation, how well they answered the questions, things like that. Another really great way to promote that positive peer interaction is through show and tell. Assign something different each day and the student is able to bring it into class or to their virtual learning session, and they can have talking points, and while you're doing it you can check off a list of what they're able to do and what they aren't able to do. Another really fun one is Student of the Week. It kind of brings in that school pride, gets them excited about something, gives them something to look forward to, and promotes the conversation skills, promotes talking about themselves on different topics that might not always be preferred, really lets the student shine. Another area for data collection within social skills is turn taking. Are they able to mute and unmute during the virtual sessions and wait to be called on? It's a little more difficult in the virtual setting because you have to take that extra step to unmute, whereas in person you can just speak. You can also use breakout room groups. This is a really fun tool to get the small group interaction going, still have some peer-to-peer time where it's not always whole group. Achievement data, even though things look so different, and as Lauren said before, it's if they're participating, not necessarily how they're participating. We need to make sure that we're still tracking that achievement data. The state is still requiring us to track student performance against standards and clusters. And this can be done in a super easy way through exit slips. You can give them on a Jamboard or a PowerPoint, and they're able to answer questions based on that lesson. And that's a very concrete form of data that you're able to then analyze and guide your instruction to go forward. You can do monthly checkpoints and check-ins on whether the student is feeling confident in the instruction or they might need some more time. Another really easy and fun way is have the student record themselves and submit a video of themselves explaining the topic, answering a question, or things like that. There's a few fun tools that we're going to talk about later that you can use this for.
So thinking about those big target areas, focusing on task behavior, participation in permanent products and social skills and all of that, we move to examples and resources. So I'm going to show you just examples of Google Forms and QR codes, and Monica is going to show you boom cards. These are, again, just examples where we're not trying to promote any specific program, but just trying to help with that data collection and data form process. So I'm going to stop my share really fast to switch gears to the Google form. So we're going to see everyone's beautiful faces in just a second. Okay, Monica, can you see this? Okay, great. Well, it was nice to see everyone's shining faces on this afternoon for just a split second. So here's an example of a way to create a virtual data collection form. So really the resources and examples we're going to give you today are free resources because, again, we don't want you to break the bank to collect effective data. So this is done through a Google form. There are so many tutorials and videos on how to do this. Really, really great resources out there. So I set mine up. Here's an example of student A using the data, his IEP data that I'm going to collect. Also, with a Google form, you can color code it. So I know that student A is always blue or student B is always red, and you share this with your family members within home. So that color coordination matches with the student each time. So if you're taking a look here, what data are you inputting? You're putting this student is focusing on 4 areas. So letter identification, social skills, so on-task behavior. Then I always like to have some form of an ABC data for behavioral. So we can always, even though it's virtual, we can track behavioral concerns, increases in challenging or maladaptive behavior, and then using some form of a workstation to promote independent work. Workstations are great now to practice because they can be generalized from distance learning to in-person, building those skills now. So if they transition back to a brick and mortar school, they'll have those skills there. So here's an example. If you put it, it goes to a drop-down menu. So you can choose which one that you're going to choose and you move on to the next section. So here's letter identification. I always like to add the date so that we know, hey, we're working on this twice a day. Oh, we're tracking our progress. Maybe we didn't work on this on Friday. So having the date is important when creating the data forms. And then using a really user-friendly way to implement the data. So right now, this student is using letter identification A, B, C, or D. Even on the description, you can talk about if it's receptive or expressive, but plus means it's correct, minus means it's incorrect, and you just plug it in. So this is something that could be shared with the staff, with family members, with related service providers, again, building that partnership for the best education for students. And then I always like to add prompts needed too. So we can say, hey, if it's always a full physical prompt, but they're getting it all correct, maybe we can start to fade those prompts. Maybe we can really start focusing on having them do this independently. So that's an example of like a letter identification. And then I wanted to show you an example of social skills instruction. There's a variety of ways on Google Forms that you can create the data. So always having that date, writing the description. Usually on the description, I paste the IEP goal. So then it is clear what we're working on. It's right under that title. It's what that goal is working on. And here's a linear graph. And so time on task for this student, we want to get to 10 minutes. So maybe during a session, hey, they got 6 minutes. So I can click on 6 minutes and then it'll track that. I always add the prompts again. And then we can say, hey, always on Wednesday, it's 3 minutes. I wonder what's going on there. Or it's moving from 3 minutes to 4 minutes to 5 minutes. So again, tracking that on-task behavior. Here's the ABC. This is the antecedent behavior consequence. So this is looking at behavior. So appropriate behavior, the increase in appropriate behavior, maybe the decrease in challenging or targeted behavior, still with the date, and then having the time is important, and then the antecedent behavior and consequence. And I like to put the antecedent and behavior in short answer. So who's ever completing this can write what's going on and can write what happens. You can also add options. So maybe you know the student really well, and the antecedent, you're having options that someone can click on. So having this there, thinking about a setting, maybe it looks like virtual first block or second block, or maybe it's when it's reading instruction. So again, thinking about a data form that could be a one-stop shop. It doesn't mean you can't supplement other data collection methods, but having that one-stop shop that can be live, that all the team members can actively use. And the last piece is doing a workstation. So again, the description could have that IEP goal or what tasks the student is using. And then I have, again, the linear I'm using here. So it would be 1, 2, 3, or 4, 5. So this student has 5 tasks to complete. So then on task 1, the short answer, this could be an example sorting. So you put sorting there, and you can actually create a task analysis. So here's the task analysis for the task box. So the student matches the icon, he places the work on the desk, he completed the task, and he placed it in the finish bin. So you add those rows, that's your task analysis right there. You can print it out, you can help train others on the task analysis, the steps that are needed. And then on the other column, it says, is it a full physical prompt? What kind of prompts are you using? Is it done independently? So this is called a multiple choice grid in Google Docs. And I do the same exact thing for task 2 through 5. So the steps are the same of how to complete it out. The short answer would be what tasks are completed. So at the very end, I always like to focus on what reinforcer is provided. What is retrieved? Do they get the reinforcer themselves? What are they working for? It's always important to pair working hard with some sort of reinforcement that gets the buy-in, that gets the student to be motivated to continue to do it. And lastly, I don't want to spend too much time on this, but just again, trying to show you example. If this is not a fit for you, totally fine. Just, trying to provide a one-stop shop for virtual data collection. The nice thing, once you have the questions, is then you have the responses. So then while you're completing it, it's creating graphs and analysis for you. So this can also be exported to Excel. So you can print this out, you can share this with families, and everyone who has access to this can look at the data live. Monica is going to talk about it a little bit more in depth about confidentiality, but really make sure that this is confidential information and shared with only team members. So you have examples of incorrect and correct responses. It shows you of what prompts needed. So for this student, they were 3 for 3 with visual prompts. Hey, can we start to fade those out? Can we move it more towards independence? So time on task, it can show you how long. So you have all the information available to you by creating a form. So that's the Google Doc. I'm going to again stop my share to move over to the PowerPoint. So again, we'll see everyone's beautiful faces. Monica, can you see this? Okay, great. So moving from the Google Forms, just one example, moving to something called QR codes. So if I move, here is an example of a QR code. So this is again a free option that I like to find the free QR codes so that you don't use like a subscription and then lose all your codes, when you have to pay for it. I like to use QR Code Monkey is an example. That's just one that I use. And I pair a QR code with a student. So here there's Adam, Jacob, Tanya, and Winston. This QR code, you put the Google form link to it. So anyone who can use your QR to see this, it automatically goes to your Google form. So why this could be beneficial is you cut out Adam's QR code and you give it to a family member, or it's at the house for in-home support, or it's on the desk for a paraeducator. So it's again that one-stop shop where they just scan the QR code and it goes right to their data. And then you can color code this. Adam, if Adam's blue, maybe this sticker is right by his desk on a blue sticker. And so it's just a systematic way, instead of having all these papers that are in all different locations, it's just streamlining a way to provide data and access and input data. Monica, do you have any, before we move to boom cards, anything about Google Slide, the Google Forms or QR codes?
The QR codes just kind of streamline everything. It makes it super easy to not have to fumble with the link and sharing a link. You just take a picture of it and it pops up. So it kind of takes the guesswork out of, did I send the link? Did I not send the link? Things like that just make it so much easier. The next fun sort of interactive activity that collects data on the spot for the teachers called Boom Cards. And this has been wonderful for both my in-person students and my virtual students this year. We are able to do them in one-on-one sessions, asynchronous lessons, independent work. You assign different decks of cards to the student based on what they are working on. And once the student completes it, it tracks the data. So you as the teacher are able to see all of the work that the students are doing, what they're not doing. And this is a sample of some of the data collected for a student working on addition problems for me. So the red shows the actual problem that they get incorrect. If you hover your mouse over it while you're on the website, it shows you exactly the problem that they got wrong. And the green ones show the correct answers. The bottom shows how fast they are responding, and the red line across the middle of that shows the average time. It also automatically produces the accuracy, so it takes that extra step out for you. You are able to just take this, and once they reach 80% accuracy, you can make it a little more challenging. So that's a really fun and interactive way for the students to be learning in multiple settings, but also a great way to collect data on those academic skills or social skills.
So here are some resources. So we showed 3 examples. So the Google form, the QR code, and then the Boom cards, which Monica explained so wonderfully. So here are different resources available. Kahoot is a game-based platform, so it focuses on competing between students, taking quizzes or tests, or even you can create leagues using Kahoot. So that's a great resource to kind of collect data in a fun and meaningful way. Padlet is another great resource. It's more about creating boards and sharing thoughts. And students being able to share. You can have different content boards. You can have different discussion questions. I've done like dream boards for students, so where they want to be on Padlet. It was really amazing. So that's just a way that you can hear from a student. I also really like Flipgrid. So Flipgrid is a way to record responses. So say you have a student who really doesn't like to talk in front of everyone else or feels uncomfortable, or maybe this is the student who has their video off. With Flipgrid, you can record a response. So a prompt, I'm sorry, you can record a question or a prompt, and that student can record a response on their own time. Also, Flipgrid can be fun with social skills. So a student can post a video and other students can respond. And that can really facilitate, a community of students together, because oftentimes when you're in front of a computer, you don't really feel that classroom environment as much. Well, Flipgrid is a great way to do that. I even like to do professional development with teachers where you post a question and all the different teachers provide their feedback and collaborate. So Flipgrid is a really great resource. Poll Everywhere is a way to poll students and you can track. So maybe it's a baseline data first, then during it, and then at the end of the lesson or the content, you can poll where students is out. This is also a gauge of how, you need to tweak or fine tune instruction. Ed Puzzle is videos that you can post, and you can embed questions into video lessons. So there are videos that are already there for teachers with content and activities, or you can create your own. And then how you adjust it to the needs of the particular student or class is you embed questions and you assess understanding. Quizlet is a great option that can be used offline as well. So for students who have trouble with internet access, it's a way to practice concepts. It's definitely practice, practice, practice. You can get repetition. They have flashcards. It's something that you can print out and review. So maybe, parents or families or in-home services can print out the flashcards and practice concepts or social skills. And then Jamboard. Any questions with Jamboard, definitely ask Monica. She's really great at Jamboard. There's a picture at the very bottom of this PowerPoint slide is Jamboard. It is a way to really try and make a virtual classroom together. So everyone can put a Post-it note on the slide. It's very live. It really tries to resemble a real classroom from a virtual setting. So everyone can participate. Everyone can be involved there. Monica, any thoughts on the examples or resources before we move on?
Just to elaborate on Jamboard, it is kind of like a virtual whiteboard, and you're able to write and the students have access to it so they can see you live writing 2 + 2, and then they can take the pen tool and write the answer as well. They can write sticky notes with questions. You're able to drag and drop. A lot of students have Chromebooks, which are touchscreen, so they can move like a cut and paste, but they don't have access to pick up the materials from school. You're able to make that digital and still have a cut and paste where they are just dragging the different pictures into the correct section.
Great. And please feel free, all the participants here, put it in the chat feature. If there's an example or resource that you'd like to share, put it in the chat box. This is really a time to collaborate with each other and share resources. So please feel free, put it into the chat feature if there are some resources that have helped you. So how we're going to close this quick lunch and learn is tips for data collection. So when we're thinking about virtual data collection, when we're thinking about adjusting what traditional data forms look like that were used in a school setting to a virtual setting, what are some tips? So we have 5 tips for you that we're going to dive into. So the first tip is building that partnership. If you're a staff, if you're a teacher or an educator, co-educate with family members. They are a huge piece of this puzzle right now. You know, they're seeing their students live. They're actively, as much as possible, involved in their students' education more so than ever. So I always like to use the term post and coach. So post, what are the expectations, and coach families and train families on how we collect data, how we implement virtual lessons. I love doing little 5-minute how-to videos. And then it's something that they can always view. So instead of just hearing it once or having it over a phone call, post something and coach them through it. Really guide families, because they're going to be really helpful as we look at our data, as we have data analysis, and we say, hey, are we seeing growth? Is there regression? Do we have to worry about the COVID slide for this individual? Really guide those family members. Also, allow students to take data when appropriately. Many of the students love the QR codes. They really get into it. As much as possible, have the students be involved in their data. I love doing a weekly wins data. So each week, what have they completed? You know, and they add it on their chart, weekly wins. We look at the end, and that's an easy way for students to get involved with their data. They can say, oh, this week was great. Look how many tasks I got completed, or look what I did on my math test or spelling test. Weekly wins, again, pairing data with positive outcomes, or, hey, this week wasn't so great. What are some things we can do to improve? How can we help? Let's set a different goal. So allowing students, when it's appropriate, can increase motivation and self-awareness. And although staff cannot rely solely on family observations, they are extremely valuable. So if you're a family or parent on this call, we appreciate what you're doing. Staff and teachers, we appreciate what you're doing here. And it's great to have that collaboration to really create the best lesson and virtual instruction possible. Tip number 2, easy accessibility. Data collection should be user-friendly and easy to implement. If there's too many moving parts, it gets too overwhelming, and what happens is it doesn't become sustainable. Sometimes it takes a couple of days to get used to it, but if it's user-friendly, you quickly get into the routine. You don't want it to be cumbersome. You don't want it to be too complex. Think about using forms that are live, that anyone who is on the team can view it and see, oh, today this is how student A did. Have forms that can be edited easily because maybe something just isn't fitting and is too complex. So try and use user-friendly, keep it simple. There's a behavioral term called parsimony. Keep it as simple as possible. It doesn't have to have all these bells and whistles to really provide a great data collection method. When in doubt, make it visual. Visual supports are an evidence-based practice. You know, they are something that it makes abstract concepts a little bit more concrete. So put a visual to it, add a color code, put a little sticker by it. It's just going to help, especially when there are so many people now collaborating in a student's instruction. And have something called a landing page. This is a term to signify a central hub or location that is consistent. So a landing page could be having a landing page for where to submit assignments or where to access certain data forms. Have a landing page for your classroom as well as for students so that it's consistent. It's a place where you can always find the forms and information that you need.
So tip number 3 is to make it fun. Data collection just seems so daunting. There's a lot of goals, a lot of students that you have to keep track of, but it's always important to bring it back to the basics, make it fun for the kids while still collecting that data that you need. There's so many great interactive digital resources that keep student engagement high and allows you to collect data with not really doing too much. We have already talked about the Kahoot, where you're able to post questions and the students are able to answer them in groups and individually, and it gives you that data of who's answering what and when and how quickly. Boom cards again. This is an example of boom cards. It's making it fun for the students because they are able to earn different badges, which is that picture there, based on the number of cards that they've done, how many correct, how long they've been logged in doing it. And it's always super exciting. There's little confetti that comes up when they earn something new, and the students are always so excited to earn that new badge. And it's really important to work with what you have. Rome wasn't built in a day. It's really important to understand that there really isn't one right answer. It may be ever changing. Something might work for one student, but it's not necessarily going to work for another. So work with what you have. Use the resources, activities, time, people that you have in your setting to be successful, and adjust to the setting and expectation. My expectations for my virtual students might be a little different than my expectations for my in-person and blended students, and that's okay. We just need to keep that in mind so we don't get too overwhelmed as educators or parents, because it is such an overwhelming and crazy time where there are a lot of changes. So just take a step back and remember that there isn't always going to be a correct or right answer. And the last tip is crucial: to keep it confidential. Only share the data and data forms with team members. Make sure that even though we are using more technology, we're using the QR codes and Google Forms, that only the required people who need it have access to it. As Lauren mentioned, a really great way to do this is through color coding. So even if someone were to get their hands on it, they don't know what student it is, but you and everybody else who's relevant on the team are able to know blue means Adam. You can have binders in your room that pair with the QR code that takes you to the virtual, but it also has worksheets, and it's a blue binder. Keeping it confidential because there might be more hands in the pot than usual and more interaction than there may have been before. Only provide the need to know information. Some people who only work with the student in math might not need to know what's going on in reading unless it's crucial and important. those two things don't necessarily overlap unless it's a behavior, and you can keep that need to know information separately. And keep it private to avoid any leaks. Everything needs to be confidential. Keep it safe for the kids and keep it how you would want your information to be kept.
And Monica, just to add something there, all of the mandates and federal guidelines for confidentiality and privacy carry over. So regardless of environment, we have to make sure we follow all of those protocols and guidelines. So to summarize, our 5 sections of today is we want to remember to plan with a purpose. Don't just add all data collection if it's not going to help you and your student. Plan with a purpose, have a game plan, and adjust. Sometimes the best intentions don't work out. Just be willing to be flexible. Plan with the end in mind. What do you want? What goal do you want to accomplish? What do we want to track? And make sure to collaborate and build those partnerships while planning that. Be kind to yourself and others. Really be kind, because there is so much going on. This was about pulling off the Band-Aid. This all kind of happened so quickly. Everyone is adjusting as well as they can be. Be kind. This takes time. There will be some ups and downs. Be kind to yourself. It will work out. Be kind to others, especially during this, challenging time. Lastly, well, second to last, be patient. Find the methods that work well. Go through all those digital resources and apps. There are so many out there. And when I talk to a lot of educators, it's not about not knowing what resources there are, it's which one works best, that refinement. So getting a whole list of all of these resources for engagement and data collection and all of that's great, but then what works best for your individual classroom and individual students? So be patient, go through them, find what works best and adjust if need be. We're all figuring this out together. However, I can help you, however, Monica and I can help you. We have our information and email at the end. Let us know. But hopefully you found some takeaways from this. Monica, do you have anything to share?
No, I think you summarized well. Just reach out if you have any questions about any of the topics that we've covered today.
And before we go into, we wanted to make sure to save a couple minutes for a question and answer, just some ending housekeeping. Here are some resources. The VCU ACE has COVID-19 resources. Don't recreate the wheel if you don't have to. We have social stories on what is COVID, how to wash hands properly, what do I do if I get sick, what do I do if my family members get sick, what are ways to keep busy at home. So there's so many resources. We have a comic strip talking about how to be safe and wearing a mask, different ways to wear a mask. So if you go to VCU ACE COVID resources, it's there. There's also a resources for parents available, some videos of suggestions on how to get through these kind of challenging times. And then there's also planning documents on how to build partnerships between home and school. So they have templates there that you can certainly check out and print out or save to your desktop that are ways to build those partnerships and goal plan together during virtual or hybrid instruction. And then this is actually the last Lunch and Learn of 2020. Thank you for being part of it. And so the Lunch and Learn takes a break until the new year. So as soon as we schedule our January, we will let you know with registration, but they are usually every Thursday from 12 to 1. But everyone have a wonderful holiday season. And then we will see you back at 2021. So now it is, and any questions, please visit or email us at autismcenter@vcu.edu. I'll leave that up for a second, and then we can go into our question and answer. We have a few minutes left.
Yeah. Well, Lauren and Monica, thank you so much. I told you before we got started, I was really excited and interested to listen in on this, and some of the responses we are getting in the chat are kind of saying that as well. And I know people are curious and interested to know if this is going to be the recording. They can access that as well as the slides that had a lot of good information in it. And I have posted the link towards the top of the chat for everyone. We do archive all of these, as I mentioned, so definitely check there. And then you can peek around in those archives and maybe you'll find another topic that you're interested in as well. Okay, and I'm going to see what else we have coming in. Oh, there was a question about the Google form, Lauren, that you were sharing with us. And if you had a template that you used from that, or did you just sort of create that based on your own experience or whatnot?
I created it based on the needs of the students. If I'll stop share and I'll put a link into the chat box of a tutorial that I found helpful. There are tons of great tutorials on how to create Google Slides, but let me stop share. I have it. I thought I might need it. So let me stop share and I'm going to paste it into, let's see.
Yeah, I mean, the comment is saying that this is amazing, and it really is. And, you know, we've been using it across our team for different reasons. And I think those Google Forms are just, they're really easy to use. And so that's one of the really attractive pieces of those.
Absolutely.
While you're pasting that in, somebody had a suggestion, I guess I would say, a make it, take it session focused on step-by-step instructions or directions for creating the Google Docs and forms for data collection. That would be a really incredible resource. And, you know, kind of, I guess, that deeper dive into this is how you do it. Maybe what you're posting now will give a good starting point though, Lauren.
Okay, sounds good. Sorry it's taken a little longer than usual. I closed out of everything, so I had better connection.
No problem. Lots of thank yous. It has been recorded. That was a question that came through. Another great session. So good to see so many people here today. I think this topic is definitely a top thing that everybody's trying to figure out right now. I did want to mention that, you know, Lauren indicated that in the new year, we'll have some more lunch and learns coming. We're working on what those topics and that schedule is going to look like. So keep an eye out on the lunch and learn page. And I've included that link in our chat as well. And another thing I'll just mention is that if you're not part of our ACE listserv, you may want to go ahead and join that, because we do send out messages with resources and events that we have coming up. And I've included the listserv link there in the chat for you also. It's just another way to sort of stay in the loop. I know we all get so many emails, but want to make sure everybody has a way to stay in that. Let's see what else is coming in. Lots of thank yous again. How's it coming, Lauren? Do you have your link yet?
I have it.
All right. I want to make sure everybody gets it.
Before we close up shop.
Yep. Any other questions? Feel free to chat. We have a few minutes left before, you know, the lunch hour is over. So.
Okay, it should be in the chat. If you guys want to just give a thumbs up if you were able to get it. Okay, perfect. Perfect.
Looks really good. I think everybody's going to probably take their next lunch break and go in there and try to play around and see if they can create one. I think you'll find it a lot easier than you think it will be. So, all right. Any other closing comments? It looks like everybody's just really grateful and yes, enjoy the holidays. Yes, I think everybody's looking forward to that.
Best of luck. Let us know. Email if you need anything. We are here to support you guys. Thank you for what you do.
Yes, absolutely. Take care, everyone.